So before we get into Life is Strange Double Exposure Chapter 3, I wanted to go over some theories that I had because that ending to Chapter 2, I thought about that ending for the rest of the day. I tried to explain some of the stuff during the gameplay, but I didn't really want to do that in the beginning or during Chapter 3 because it will probably take up a whole bunch of time. So we are going to do that right here, right now, and I have my whiteboard out with my markers to better explain what was going through my head throughout the whole thing. I had some thoughts during the first chapter, but the second chapter really had me thinking, and that ending, I feel like it kind of confirmed some of my suspicions of what was happening. I'm just so happy that there's a lot of like astronomy and science talk in this game and bouncing around the timelines. Like, I love this stuff. This is so much fun. All right, so in Chapter 2, we finally get a chance to really manipulate the times, right? We have the time where Safi is dead, which is the blue time, and then the orange time, I'm gonna make it red for this video, is when she's alive. Oh, that is not a strong red. I need a better red. So here we have when Safi is dead, and this is the red line where Safi is alive. Now we think that they are happening at the exact same time. But remember, when I went into the turtle restaurant place, I noticed that some of the murals were different. And I'm just like, okay, if we were living in two different timelines of the same place, you would think that the murals would be the same. So that's why I'm thinking that where Safi is alive isn't technically the same timeline going the same way as the blue, but it's more like a diagonal. It's like, it's not exactly the same. Oh, this is bad. It's not exactly the same, but it's slightly different. Like, completely different would be like this. Like, they'll be completely different. So if they were exactly the same, the only difference would be that Safi was dead. And yes, the events would have been canceled and all of that stuff, but think about what happened to Gwen. So the two things that we noticed for sure that were different was what was going on with Gwen and what was going on with Lucas. I need a different marker. I'm gonna use black. In the timeline where Safi is dead, Lucas is okay with his family and is talking to his son and everything's okay, but Safi doesn't really like him. All he talks about is his book, and he makes things about himself, and he just looks for attention. But in the timeline where Safi is alive, Lucas's son told his mother that his father said that he heard his father say that he was the reason that his parents got a divorce or something like that. And Lucas is just like, no. He's just like, where is this coming from? I just want to see my son, you know, what's going on. But Lucas thinks that Safi somehow made his son hear him say it. And he also ordered a restraining order against Safi. Now this is where things get weird, right? But first I'm gonna mention what happened to Gwen. I really want to get into Chapter 3, but I have to like get this out of my head. All right, I think this is better. Okay, so this is the timeline where Safi is dead. This is when she's alive. So with Gwen, when we were walking in the hallway, Gwen was making a phone call and was talking to somebody about talking to the police. We don't know who that is yet. And I feel like this is more than her pulling of the book. It's a reason why she pulled the book, because she had concerns about Safi. In the timeline where Safi is alive, we see Gwen getting escorted out of her office over a rumor. Now, when we were snooping in Gwen's office in the alive timeline, that's when we saw the emails from Maria. In the dead timeline, we saw an email from Safi to Gwen, like way before I think she was even in the college or whatever. And she was writing a poem, and it sounded like she was with someone and either she killed them or watched them die. And she was just saying, I'm sorry. And it's just like, whoa. So that's why I was coming up with the theory that she was writing a book and it has some tell-all thing or something was happening, and maybe it was something about Gwen and she didn't want it to get out. I don't know. Because why would you pull a book? Why would you stop your own mentee's success? You know, it's like, what was she writing about? In the new timeline, in Yasmin's calendar, which we saw in Vin's desk, right? We saw that there was some disciplinary meetings that Yasmin was going to have with Gwen. Now, why were the meetings gonna happen? I'm gonna tell you why. Because in the Alive timeline, Gwen was seen on video selling drugs on campus. I don't know why she would do it, knowing that there are cameras everywhere and she really took her job seriously, but who knows? People do what they do. But Gwen was just like, I didn't do this. I know I didn't do this. I don't even know how they did it. It's some deep fakes, whatever, right? Now, if you've seen my gameplay of chapter 2, at some point when we were talking about Lucas, when he was saying that, oh, it was Safi that told his son whatever it was and made it seem like it was him, because we're just like, but your son said you said it and it wasn't Safi. I was like, the only way she could do that is if she did like a voice mod or a deep fake of his father's voice and did it that way. And then I was just like, okay, if she set it up with Gwen, or anybody set it up with Gwen, they could deep fake it if they were doing things and then somehow got her image and edited all the stuff to make it look like Gwen, right? Now I'm going to go to my second part where I talk about the different timelines and how I think that there's a third. There's a third, right? Possibly a fourth, but I think it's a third timeline / an energy manipulation. Stay with me. Stay with me. Okay, so we have the Safi is dead timeline, and we have this slant that is the Safi is alive timeline. Now, this little dot right here is Max. This is another thing that I was thinking about. Let's go back to the first Life is Strange. Like this, Chloe died. Every time Max did a rewind, it changed this existence. On this side is the first Life is Strange, right? This is Safi's side, this is Chloe's side. Okay, so in the first Life is Strange, this would have been the timeline if Chloe stayed dead, because remember, Chloe died. But every time Max did a rewind, it was slightly changed this same timeline. So this is the exact same timeline, except every now and then Max would do things and alter it, so it's almost like it was going like this. And that is why they had that big tornado. It was just so many energies just going around and around, and it just created this vortex to where it couldn't take it anymore because she was messing up this timeline so bad. So just imagine this exact timeline constantly being manipulated, and that's what happened, you know, when you had to figure out if you wanted to sacrifice Chloe or sacrifice Arcadia Bay. I sacrificed Arcadia Bay. Now, this takes me to my next point. So in my gameplay, which may be different from other people's, and I don't know if the writers and developers made it this way, but in my gameplay, Chloe is alive, which means the original timeline is altered. So we are entering Safi's existence up here with an already altered timeline energy, if that makes sense. So here's Max, right? Max already has this residual energy from Arcadia Bay, right? From Arcadia Bay, from being messed up. So we didn't start college with the correct balanced timeline where things were meant to be the way they are. We are going into this new place with this really messed up energy. So even though we kept Chloe alive and sacrificed Arcadia Bay, I don't think that that was a true trade-off. So we still have this around us. That is why we are able to even have that power to manipulate this timeline. I think that Max's aura was kind of on its own affecting this timeline because of the past timeline. So I feel like no matter where she goes, it's gonna affect people anyway, or the things around her. We are going to jump to a super theory. I have another board, and on this board I wrote Maya and Hannah. If you look at my gameplay in the first chapter, there is a memorial on campus by a tree dedicated to a past student who was, I think, a writer, and her name was Maya, and she passed away tragically, right? So I was just like, that's interesting, because, you know, Max was like, oh, I wonder if they're gonna do a memorial like this for Safi. And I was like, oh, okay. And then later on, we find Maya's book, her self-published book, in the library. So I was like, okay, cool, successful writer. That sucks that, you know, she was on her way up and she passed away. So then in chapter 2, we go and see the crime scene where Safi passed away because something weird was going on campus. And we see a plaque that is dedicated to a girl named Hannah, who was related to the founder of the school, I think. And she was just this prestigious writer. She was like amazing and successful, and she tragically died at age 21. And I'm just like, that's the second writer that they mentioned that passed away younger. So now Safi is the third young lady to pass away on this campus. And I'm just like, this might be a pattern. But that's not the only pattern. Here's the twist. So why were we at the crime scene, you ask? I'll tell you. Because earlier there was a student that was having a whole anxiety attack on campus, and we were asking why, and he said that he saw himself near the site where Safi died. So now go to my gameplay of chapter 1. In the beginning, where we are following Safi, we see her walk after the gunshot. We were walking to see where she was because she had a phone call that was suspicious, and there was a gunshot. And when we looked up in this area, we saw her walking and on the phone. But when we got up there, she was shot. And when we found her body, I saw that she had a camera in her hand, and I was just like, why would she have the camera in her hand? That didn't make any sense. She was on the phone, right? So now we're getting into a whole nother thing. We're getting into a whole nother timeline, which is the Caledon timeline. I think that even though Max's energy can somewhat affect and manipulate the timeline where Safi is dead and just, you know, make the weird things going on around her, I think that when she got there, this third timeline was already there, but to them it's their second one. I think that there was this lead of energy, and that particular space in the forest, wherever they are, whichever state they are, has some type of portal where their timelines, their alternate timeline, their alternate universes collide, right? Because while we were at the crime scene where Safi was, we saw annoying Loretta, but she gave us some tea. We saw some flowers that were under the tarp, which was weird because it's like, it's snowing outside, it's freezing. Why is there flowers there? I think that shows the dips in the timelines, because wherever the other timeline is, maybe it's springtime. I don't know what kind of flowers those were. Those could be winter flowers. Those could be something that grow in the spring, but it's like, why were they there? And they were nowhere else. But Loretta did tell us that Safi was friends with Maya, and Safi never mentioned the Maya, which brings us back to that poem that I read where she was talking about someone who was suffering and she was saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I'm like, did she kill Maya, or did something happen to where it looked like she killed Maya? Because of this third timeline, people see doppelgangers. And I feel like that timeline exists whether it's in the dead Safi timeline or the alive Safi timeline. There is a third timeline, okay? Here's Safi's alive timeline. Here's Safi's dead timeline. Here's Max, who already got that energy from, you know, what was going on in Arcadia Bay with Chloe. But there was already this other timeline going on already before she got there. So if you watch my gameplay of chapter 2, you will see the plot twist. Spoiler alert, don't watch it. Go ahead, watch my video and then come back. Watch my video and come back. So Moses took Safi's camera. So when they looked at the camera and saw the last selfie that they took, they saw that she took another picture, and it was Max with a gun in her hand. So of course, Max and Moses are like, what in the world is happening? Moses is just like, stay away from me. And Max has no idea because she knows that she didn't do it. Now, this is where I think there's a alternate timeline. I think Maya saw Safi because they were friends, and Safi saw Max. Why would this timeline Max kill Safi? That still doesn't make any sense, but I think that maybe she's doing it for a reason to probably complete this timeline where Chloe didn't die. I think that she's using Safi to make everything right. We have been collecting Polaroids all around campus, and it was really weird to me. The first one that we found had the bottle cap that Moses gave us on the snowman, and I still don't understand why that is, but when we were looking for Safi, we saw the snowman knocked down and that bottle cap nearby. I think that by the end of the game, we are going to see the third timeline that has been pretty much shown to us through the Polaroid pictures, which kind of brings us back to almost like full circle the first game where she took pictures with the Polaroid camera. The Polaroids are what we see in the third timeline because we saw Diamond and Reggie having fun and drinking, which they weren't doing in the timeline where when she was alive at first. They weren't doing that. And then in the photo of Max shooting Safi, she had a tear. She was crying. She didn't want to do it, but I feel like she had to do it to reset everything, to make everything like good. And maybe, possibly, they might bring back Chloe, or Max might talk to Chloe and somehow she talks her into just making everything right. And that's why she shot Safi. But we don't know. That's just one of my theories. When we met with Gwen in the alive timeline, we saw that somebody flattened her tires. And that's also the same timeline where we're trying to figure out who put the cow head in Safi's car. In the Safi dead timeline, we just know that she's innocent and, you know, she just died and that was that. But in the alive timeline, we finding out that she's been with Vin and she has all these secrets that Maxine doesn't know about. And it just seems like, I think that her and Gwen are cool, I'm not sure, but it just seems like there's a lot of trouble with Safi in the alive timeline, and people don't really like Safi's mom in the alive timeline, but we never hear that. We never hear any of those criticisms of Yasmin in the timeline where Safi passed away. So I feel like in that area where she died, that's like the portal of, you know, another timeline, and that has nothing to do with Max. I think that was already there, or it's residual energy because she's been around on this new campus that is affecting you know, these timelines to where it created a third one. So who knows what's gonna happen in chapter 3 or the rest of the game. I just needed to get that out because I did not want to spend my chapter 3 gameplay talking about all of this because it's just been in my head and I'm just like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? And this is the only way I can explain it, through scribbles and colors. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my little theory video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of my gameplay of Life is Strange Double Exposure. So I will see you in chapter 3. Fear is the loudest.